Welcome to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with host Lane Nordland.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cattleman's Call podcast. Lane Nordland joining you here today, and it is National Farm Safety and Health Week 2024. You know, I think we need to have safety and health on the mind, not only during 1 week, but every single day of the year. So as we come together here during National Farm and Health Safety Week. We're joined today by Sam Cossio. He is joining us here today from the Kennewick, Washington area here today. He is with Back to Basics. A little bit about Sam. He was born on a cattle ranch there in Zacatecas, Mexico, and came to work here in the U.S. when he was a teenager. And he began working with Simplot Feeders there in Washington State, where he learned the ins and out of the feedlot business, from maintenance to cattle processing to feeding and shipping. And as I mentioned, he has a company called Back to Basics, which he got going back there in 2021, sharing that knowledge with folks not only there in the PNW, but across the nation. Sam, that was a long intro for me to say for you, but I just want to say welcome for joining us here on the podcast today.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to your listeners.
Well, again, thanks for joining us here today. And as we move from summer to fall officially here, I guess, what's it been like up there in Washington this summer here in 2024?
It's been a pretty regular summer. You know, we get extremely hot in the summer, and even though we're in the Pacific Northwest, we get pretty hot here. We're in the desert part of the state, and right now it's starting to cool down. Fall is in the air almost.
What are those guys that like to harvest wheat on those steep hills out in that country? Have they started harvest out your way yet?
Yes, they did. They're done with that.
I tell you,
with potatoes and onions, and about to start on apples.
I always say that I was, you know, I come from a cow-calf family here in Montana, and we always joke that we're not brave enough to be in the feedlot business. And for years, we've never had the feed to do that, of course. But I'm not brave enough to be a wheat farmer out in the Tri-Cities area of Washington. Folks, if you've never seen them harvest wheat, they are pretty much on a vertical out there, and it is steep, and they have specialized machinery to put up their crops up there on those steep hills. But hey, they get good crops out there. But Sam, as I mentioned in our intro, you were born in Mexico, and obviously you live in Washington now. But let's share a little bit about your background. How did you end up in Washington State and here in the United States, and how did you find yourself saying, you know what, I have so much experience and knowledge from especially the feedlot sector and working with so many different stakeholders in there to start Back to Basics. But let's just share a little bit about your background for all of our friends listening here today.
Okay. Well, like you said, I was born in Zacatecas, Mexico. I came to the U.S. as a 15-year-old boy that was just kind of coming to the U.S. for the summer, to California, actually. And I always tell a story, and I'll tell it real quick. The fridge was full of food here, and I didn't want to go back to an empty one. So I stayed here against my father's wishes. And from 15 to 18, I stayed down in California and just did odd jobs. But at 18 years of age, I had a friend of mine that worked out here in Simplot Feeders and invited me to be part of their doctor crew. I had some experience with cattle, so he told me he worked in a 90,000 head feedlot, and I never even heard of something like that. And I thought he was crazy, to be honest with you. So I took a plane up here, and there he was. Started working as a doctor, but while I was in California, I did go to English school at night. So I learned to speak English and to write and read. So I became the typical Hispanic kid at a feed yard that everyone was using for translating and interpreting for people. Basically propelled me to be a supervisor, which was way too soon. At 19 years of age, I was telling a group of 14 pen riders what to do and doing it in a very wrong way because I didn't know anything about it. But it gave me lots of experience. At about 21 years of age, I went to work at a small feed yard called Easter Day Ranches. That little yard was only 10,000 head. And there is where I had the opportunity to grow. We opened basically 7 feedlots in the 21 years that I was working for them in different communities, in different sizes, different cultures, different everything. And I screwed up so many times that that's how I dare to start my company now, consulting for feedlots, because kind of what I teach is what not to do rather than what to do. Because I call my company back to basics, because feeding cattle is a lot simpler than we make it. We sometimes overcomplicate things, and that's kind of my story. So moved through the ranks of feeding. I did everything at the feed yard, so I kind of learned. It's easy for me to talk to people about feed yard stuff because I kind of done it. It helps me a lot when I'm connecting with people or talking to people, because I feel their pain. I know what they're going through. Uh, uh, if that explains it.
And obviously, having this opportunity to, I like how you put it, the fridge was full here. And working your way up there, and to look back now at being 19 and 21 years old, and giving out orders, we all, no matter what sector of the livestock and cattle business we're in, I think we've all been in those positions where you're young and you're bringing some ideas maybe back to the ranch, or you're trying to work with somebody that's older than you that maybe's worked on the operation longer than you've even maybe been born. I guess, what were some of those moments where you've had we'll be polite and say, your hat handed back to you,
Right?
and
Yeah.
you really had those growing moments? Because I know when we're young and full of vinegar, we like to feel like we know everything and we're going to take on the world. But you also had people that were working under you. You were working as a translator. I guess, what were some of those moments where you really felt like, what, I just learned so much, even though it might have been one of the worst things you maybe had to go through for a day or two?
Yeah. Well, the biggest things for me have always been that you learn from the people that you attempt to lead a lot more than you do from your bosses. And at that time, I was very confused because I had a boss that would tell me, "Okay, Sam, now it's time for you to be the boss. Now it's time for you to crack the whip, and you can't let these guys do whatever they want, and blah blah blah." And the minute that you take that intention to the people throw it back at your face, and you realize that you're nothing without them. That to me was the hardest thing to learn, because it didn't make any sense in my mind why they wouldn't listen to me. And the reason they weren't listening to me is because I was barking orders. I wasn't connecting with them in any way, shape, or form, because I didn't know how. Nobody's ever told me about connection with people. So all I was doing is just telling them what to do, and they rejected it because I probably delivered it very wrong. Because obviously, as you heard about my life, I come kind of from the street. So I'm very direct and very honest. And some of those old timers, you have to earn their respect. You can't just show up and bark orders, because that just never works at work or in life in general. I mean, anywhere you go in life, you will get slapped in the face if you behave that way. And I'm glad I never did, but I probably should have. So
So, Sam, for yourself, obviously, you've had so much you've learned so much, and now you're sharing that knowledge with Back to Basics. And something that we always talk about in agriculture is issues with labor, trying to find folks to move out into the middle of nowhere of Montana or Wyoming. Again, our audience knows I reference these areas because this is where I'm from. I'm used to the cow calf, the wide open spaces. But labor, so whether it's trying to find someone to come work for you out in the middle of nowhere, or work in the feedlots, work in our processing plants, any aspect of the cattle beef supply chain, labor is always a discussion. And from your 20 plus years of working in the business, I guess what are some of the key challenges that you've seen, maybe that you saw when you first moved up there to Washington, and what were some of the things that we've actually see maybe get remedied or fixed, and what are some of those challenges that are currently underway or on the horizon in terms of trying to keep people fed here in the United States and across the globe, and keeping cattle moving through the supply chain when it comes to having labor.
right? So I actually somewhat disagree with the labor shortage in the sense that everywhere I go, from Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, Montana, even, and here in Washington, I think we in the cattle industry have made a mistake over the years of not voicing to society the opportunities that we have in our businesses. We keep talking as if we're working 14-hour days, but it's really not true. You know, every packer that I know works 8 hours a day. Feedlots are working 8 hours a day. Uh, we don't go to high schools. We don't go anywhere to tell people, you know, those high school dropouts end up working in restaurants because they advertise that they pay $15 an hour. Well, we never do things like that. And we should. We should go to the communities. We should go connect with everyone in the community and tell them the opportunities. I mean, I am only a tiny example of that. There is hundreds of people like me, thousands of people like me that have gotten opportunities, but then we just get it and then we don't talk about it. Then we don't tell people about it. So today I travel the country and I go all over the place, and that's what I do. I just talk to people and tell them, hey, did you know that at the feedlot down the road, they're starting people at $20 an hour? And if you really work there, I guarantee you in 5 years, you'll be a manager of some sort. And you don't need a college education. All these things, I feel we don't tell people enough, and people just don't know them. People think that they got to do landscaping, they think that they got to do construction, they think they got to do those jobs, but we have as good a jobs or better in our industry. And I feel that as a whole, we became a little complacent before because we had more people. And I'm talking 20, 30 years ago, and it's changing now. Now, being remote and not having enough population in your town, that is a real issue. But that's not a labor shortage. That's just a population shortage. You know, you put your business where there wasn't no people, and maybe you have to become more creative how you attract people. But where I live, there is so many people here. If you have a fila here and you have a problem with employees, you have got to look at your system. You are making mistakes because there's people ready to work.
And I think that brings up a perfect transition, Sam, of looking at yourself, at your business, and if you're not willing to adapt and make changes and look at profitability and labor and everything like that, I think that segues perfectly into back to basics. And so when you officially launched your consulting firm there in 2021, I guess what were some of the key things you wanted to help uh, the sector accomplish when you first started back to basics, and maybe how has that changed a little bit as you work one-on-one with these different operations? But at the beginning, what were some of those key things you wanted to help a feedlot or any type of livestock operation really help benefit themselves by learning more about how to keep employees, how to work with employees, and again, stay in business?
Right. I feel part of the reason that I started my company is because I was lucky enough to work with a bunch of guys, and we were able to create leaders in our company where we never hired an outside manager ever. We always made them, and that included even teaching some of the guys the language, hiring teachers to teach them at night, teaching guys how to do their finances so they don't get in trouble, so you don't become the business that has to pay for the brand new pickup when they couldn't afford it. People that own businesses will know exactly what I'm talking about when an employee comes to you and tells you, hey, I need a raise because I bought a pickup, and you're like, wait, what? Why? you know, you're not doing a different job. So those little things are very difficult to manage. We were able to manage them as a community, as getting involved with people on everything. This is what I wish I can do when I go and talk to people. I want to teach people that they have to connect with their employees. You have to know what makes them tick. You have to know what they like, what they dislike. There's nothing wrong with adopting your system at your feedlot or ranch or processing plant according to the people that are working for you. Absolutely nothing wrong, because if you do that, that's how you create a culture, and then those people take care of your animals, take care of your equipment, take care of everything that you have. If you become, let's just think of it as a sports team. If you become a team that has a really good school and you're making players and then you're selling those players, there's a pride that comes to the team with that, that it's okay. You don't have to be fearful of, oh, I'm going to teach this guy all these things and then he's going to leave me. He will leave you. Some will leave, but also some will stay, and they will be very proud to stay in a company that allows people to further their careers. And then all of a sudden, you can't stop it. It just becomes a thing. It's your culture. Just like we can have a negative culture, we can also have a positive one. And so every client that I go to, I'm always so positive. It can be annoying at times for people, but I never sit around and dwell on there's no people, there's a shortage, the weather is bad. I don't do any of that, because I have a saying, and I always tell everybody that's our first world problem. Let's not worry about this problem today, because it's really not that big of a problem. So if that makes any sense, that's I just bring positivity to these teams that work so many hours in such a harsh conditions. I don't show up and be like, how many did we pull today out of the pens? You know why I say? I show up and I say, how many cattle did we not pull? You know what I mean? In any given feed yard in America, any given day, you have 99% of those cattle that are in perfect health, and yet we only talk about the 1%. Why would we do such a thing? If that makes any sense, that's kind of what I do.
No, I think that makes perfect sense, because I know in the livestock business, I think we do tend to dwell on the negatives,
Yep.
because it's easier to complain about, well, the bulls got out today, or yeah, we lost some stock unfortunately here today, and I think it is so important to say it's a beautiful day out. We have our health, we have opportunities. We live here in a nation that allows us to be competitive and look at opportunities to expand. And I guess from your perspective too, what is maybe the attitude change in working with your clients, like when maybe they have that breakthrough moment of saying, you know what, I maybe I do need to just say I am pretty lucky to be in the business I am here today, and I'm glad Sam's here to help me through it as well, and look at the opportunities we have to improve our employee experience and retainership.
Right. Well, to me, the number one thing that allows me to get out of bed every day and smile and go to work is two very important things that are always on my heart. Number one is just the opportunity this great country gives you. I mean, we all live the American dream every day. If we don't believe it, we just have to go travel to a different country and you'll see it immediately. That's number one. And number two is my connection with people. Everywhere I go, I try to connect with people first. I don't even want to talk about cattle with my clients until we have an understanding of who we are to each other and what makes us happy and what doesn't make us happy. And because through connection, you will find your why, you will find your strength, you will find that, like a soldier that goes to war, finds himself at war, and he's not fighting for his country anymore, he's fighting for his friend. And I know that comparison is a little crazy, but that's how I see everything. You form a sports team, and if you have a person that don't connect with the team, he or she could be the best player in the team and they're out of that team. And in the industry, if we looked at everything that way, I believe that a lot of people will not have a bad attitude because we always leave toxic employees around because they never quit. Toxic employees are great at staying in your business and destroying it from within. And if you don't see it, you call them your best worker sometimes. And they're not. They're anything but that. You'll say things like, he's such a great worker, but his attitude is bad. How can you say such a thing? That is like the opposite of a good worker. A good worker is that one that has a good attitude and makes mistakes. I'll take that guy tomorrow all day long, right? So I've been with clients where they say, I don't really trust that guy. And that guy is operating their $500,000 loader. How do you not trust somebody but you give him $500,000 to operate? That attitude, all those things, I think the only way you get rid of them, Lane, is through connection with people, through being friends with the people that you work with, not be afraid of connecting. Get this American professional word, get this HR that kidnaps companies and doesn't let people connect anymore. You can connect with people without disrespect. I mean, we've been doing this since the beginning of time. I don't know why we fear it today, but there's a lot of places where that's feared.
Sam, maybe circling back to your journey to where you find yourself here today, could you maybe share more of, again, you mentioned you raised up there in Mexico and found yourself as a teenager here in the United States. And I know there's people listening here today that we all know that the border immigration, it's a hot debate. It's divided the country, and unfortunately, we talk about H-2A reform and getting guest workers and whatnot. That gets tied up into the border discussions. I know this is a delicate situation when we talk about immigration and then throw guest workers in there in the border, but from your perspective, can you just share more about your journey and finding yourself being a business owner and what you hope others can maybe learn about your experience too, and what maybe other folks from Mexico or other nations that are coming here to live the American dream, tips that you have for them as well. But another point I want to make later on is how culturally diverse the cattle industry truly is. That's a point I want to make down the road in our conversation. But can you maybe share more about your journey as well?
Yeah, yeah. So I come from a ranching family, and I only have one brother and one sister. But in my family, we were supposed to go to college. We were poor, we didn't have anything, but we always had food. We always had cattle, chickens, milk, cheese, all that stuff. So when I left and came to the US, there's always been a fire in me to kind of compete with my brother and my sister, right? Because they did go to college, and my whole family is still in Mexico. I'm the only one here in the U.S. I came on a tourist visa because I was underage. I overstayed my visa, which is illegal. And then when I overstayed my visa, I actually got married to a girl from Montana, from Three Forks, Montana. And that's how I became an American citizen. Now, having said all that, I do believe in one thing, and I always talk to all my Mexican friends and my Hispanic friends and anybody that comes here from anywhere in the world. I don't. I think it's very important that we come to the U.S. and we respect the country and we embrace its culture. I always tell my Mexican friends, you don't have to quit being Mexican. You can grab your glass and then just your glass got big and put American things on it. You don't have to take the Mexican things out to become an American because that's what makes this country what it is. So, having said all that, the immigration deal has nothing to do with the people. Has everything to do with our two-party system, and they're just messing with us at this point because one party wants it open, the other party wants it closed, And they don't really mean that either. What we need is a good system. We need a system where companies can go anywhere they want in the world and get people to come work if they choose to. Right now, we have a system that encourages people to break the law and come illegally, and it's not their fault. They're hungry, they're escaping from somewhere. The problem is that bad people can go through that too. And we all know that. I have a family. I know what state my home country is. I know some of the people that come across are not going to be the best people, but I also know some of them are the best people. So on the immigration debate, I just think that these band-aids with these guest programs, the H2 or the TN visas, I think they're horrible programs, especially for small towns, like probably where you live. Because if you get 20 guys on a TN visa, you solve one business problem for labor, but then you have to, they take all the money away from your county, and then you have zero revenue. So that becomes expensive for the other citizens that are there. So that's not fair. I see this in every little town from Kansas to Montana, Nebraska, everywhere. And I don't like it. I think there's enough people in this country right now. I can walk down my street and I can find you people to work. I've been in tiny little towns in Nebraska where the managers will tell me to my face, we can't find anyone. And I have taken managers to the gas station for lunch, and then five Mexican guys come in from from a construction site, and then I tell them, "Hey guys, do you know that you can have a full time position on these feedlots here? You don't have to rely on the weather construction site." And they didn't even know those feedlots existed. I've been in places like Scott City, Kansas, 1 million head of cattle in 10 miles. I talked to a gas station worker. He didn't know what a feedlot was. I mean, those things are so real that if we will just get out of our chairs and get out of our offices and go talk to our community, we will find people. And then all of a sudden, the immigration problem will be less because nobody will be so in such a need to bring so many people because those people come across, but somebody employs them. You have to remember that. Somebody does give them jobs. So then the system is broken as far as I can see.
And I like, and again, whether it is someone coming to the United States for the first time looking for employment, or just someone that was born and raised in a community, just having interaction and one-on-one and talking with somebody, I think is so important, as you pointed out, getting out of the office, because sometimes ZipRecruiter isn't the best way to probably find someone to work in a processing plant or a feedlot. And I guess what is that like when someone's maybe that's hired you to come in and help them find workers, or help improve their operation? I guess what is that like to see their reaction, just knowing that, just having a simple conversation? And that's one of the first things you said at the beginning of our conversation,
Yeah.
about just talking and being proactive and being a people person. I guess what's that like to see someone maybe
Well,
change? Like, man, that I didn't even think of that.
when I call my company back to basics, it's because we have to go back to the basics of everything in my mind. That's what I'm trying to do, right? So when I go talk to some of my clients and then I point out something so apparent and so logical, they go like this. What was I thinking? How can I not see this? And the reason they couldn't see it is because they're into a habit, a daily habit of whatever they do every day, which is why it proves that we all need help, is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
It proves that we all need a set of eyes from outside to come and look around, and they'll find the weeds and they'll find the things that are horrible to the eye that you don't see because you drive by them every day. One of the things about finding people and retaining people that I always talk to people about is I always make my clients this really tough question. And this truly is a tough question if you're honest with yourself. What are you doing different for your employees from everybody else? If you cannot answer that question with 10 things immediately, then you have to admit that you're doing something very wrong or that you're just not doing anything different,
Mhm.
which is the same as doing nothing. If you say we have competitive wages and a 401k and insurance and blah, 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 well, so does the next guy. What else do you have? Because your people, your actual workers, are your best recruiters. You're not able to go find people by yourself. But if you have a team of 30 people in your 40,000 head feedlot, you have 30 people that will go out there for you and find you people. They will find them. I guarantee you they will find them. The problem is that why would they? What incentive do they have to find people? Are they happy with you? Do they want to train somebody new? Do they get compensated for training people that are on their phone all day? All those things, because in a regular feedlot, you have the best feed truck driver. Guess who trains the new people? Your best feed truck driver. So does he pay to be the best feed truck driver? No. You get punished by training. So all those little things is what gets you people. It's not, it's the basics again, right? You go back to the basics and it's common sense. Just don't do anything that hurts your team, and your team will flourish. And they will be calling you and telling you this. I know we're looking for somebody, boss. My cousin is going to come and apply, but don't hire him because he's a bad man. Let's get somebody else. I've had that happen to me so many times. It happens on my teams today. Not a day goes by that I don't have people calling me for a job. Every day. And I can drive 10 miles from here to a feed yard and they're hurting for people. It's because they're doing something wrong with their employees. And we can do small things like carry gift cards in your pocket and go out there, and instead of finding somebody doing something bad, find somebody doing something good. You know, that feed truck driver that got out to open the gate for the pen rider, that pickup driver that slowed down for the horses when they were in the feed alley, give him a $20 gift card. Watch what happens. He goes home, tells his wife, she goes down to Starbucks and gets 3 coffee cups because you gave him something. Guess what that guy's going to do tomorrow? And it costs you $20 and your attention. But we don't do that because we're sitting in our office looking at the market go up and down, and and then we end up not doing those things, right? So this is what I do when I go talk to my clients. And like I said, it's hard work because you got to get out there and do it. You can't just wish it into happening. You can't throw money at it. Everybody knows that the more you pay, it doesn't matter. It's not about the pay. It's about how you treat people. It's about how you give them a future. You know, right now in my company, the way I hire people, I'll be like, you start today, we'll give you X amount of dollars. In 6 months, if you and I are happy with each other, we're going to give you this much. And then the next 6 months, we're going to give you this. The next 6 months, we're going to give you that. But I always tell them, we have to both be happy with each other. And I have a rule in my company. 50% of your job is getting along with your coworkers. The other 50% is actually doing your job. So you can't come to me and tell me, I'm doing my job, but I don't like Juan. Well, you're not doing your job then, right? And you just make it a simple rule, but it's not easy to make that rule because maybe you yourself behave that way sometimes. And if you do that, then you're the example of your people, if that makes any sense.
So, Sam, if someone's listening to this saying, you know what, I really want to reach out to Sam and work with him, share with us how someone starts to cultivate working with back to basics. What resources do you ask them to provide you, and what does the timeline look like? Obviously, you're a boots on the ground type of guy. You're going to go there, you're going to learn about the business. What This isn't just I'm going to show up and work with you for 1 or 2 days. It really seems that you're going to be committed to helping them grow, and this is going to be a long-term relationship, and helping them find labor, and figuring out what their future looks like, reevaluating their goals, and what's going to make them appealing, and make people dedicated and a part of their brand or their business and be proud of that brand. So just share what the typical client experience is like, from the start, that first phone call or text or email, to seeing success and having employees retain as well.
Yeah. So back to basics also offers labor, like skilled labor and processing teams in our in the Pacific Northwest. So that's simple. Somebody calls me for people, and I send them people, and the people that I send are 100% trained. That's my commitment to that person, so they don't have to worry about training. If they need a fence builder, they're gonna get one. If they need a loader operator, that's what they're gonna get. That's one side of my business. The consulting side of my business, you call me, I show up, and I meet your entire team, and then I build from the top down. That's where people have to always understand. I won't even talk to the people until the person that calls me is 100% committed. Because if that person can destroy everything we do, but they can also build everything we do. So I have had some people in the past that will call me and say, come over here and fix it, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. Well, that doesn't work. I will tell you right there it doesn't work, and I will just come home and save you your money and my time. Mm-hmm. The only way this works, it has to start with the leader. He or she have to participate or have someone to do it for them in their organization. And then we start working, and sometimes it's like 1 or 2 or 3 days the first week. Then after that is a monthly visit, but we talk on the phone all the time. I connect with the supervisors, and they call me, hey, I saw this today. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? I'm thinking about doing this, and I'm thinking about doing that. When you become my client, you have me at any time. So you can call me, you can text me, you can email me questions, whatever. So I participate on the team entirely. Some clients want leadership, coaching, trainings. Some companies actually want operations and everything that entails that. So I participate different with different companies depending on what they want. But the one thing that they all get is that I completely and absolutely connect with the people that are there to the point that I become one of them when I'm there. Uh, and then I help them find candidates for new supervisory positions. I make trainings. I find within the community a way to for some Mexican guys to learn English, for instance, and give them like a 6 month window. If you learn it, then this opportunity is right here for you. Things like that. But it all starts with the first phone call and one meeting with the person that is gonna implement the changes. That person is super important.
And I mentioned earlier, Sam, just especially when you get into a processing facility, I think those are probably one of the most diverse workplaces in terms of different ethnicities and cultures, especially in our larger processing facilities. How important is it for farmers and ranchers to look at to point out that there is a lot of different cultures in livestock production? I think sometimes we get focused on our family operations, fifth generation here in the United States, and that's the face of agriculture. But when we're looking at the complete and total supply chain, yeah, you get into the feedlots and the processing plants. There's different cultures. There's different, there's so many differences in these workplaces, and that comes with challenges as well. How do you work with your the people that ask you to consult for them to address the challenges that come with diversity in the workplace? Just because there's people from Asia, Africa, South America, Central America, all over. It truly is you'll never see a more diverse workplace in America, I always say, especially when you're in the beef processing sector. I guess how important is it to really highlight the importance of understanding cultures along the way and trying to find efficiencies in the workplace?
Yeah, it's super important. The way that I explain it, if you have a feed yard And say you have a 50,000 head feed yard and you have 40 full-time employees, and out of those 40 full-time employees, you have 35 Hispanic guys or girls that are working everywhere, and then you have 10 or 7 or whatever, and they're all managers, and they're, let's just say, they're white. uh, there's always going to be a disconnect. I'm sorry. You have to find the glue that ties it together. If you have a group of 10 women working in your feedlot at any given place, you should have a woman supervisor. If you have 20 Mexican guys, you should have a Hispanic supervisor for them. Because too many places you go and they don't even understand each other.
Mhm.
And then they use a translating kid like they did me, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So processing plants are really bad about this because they just hire by, they promote by seniority type deal. And some of them are unionized, and it's a lot harder. It's the HR problem that I always call. In a feed yard, in a family operation, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but there's too many feed yards in America that go to the colleges for these great interns, and then they're making managers of the feedlots. And every Mexican guy that has spent 5 years working in that feed yard quits that day. I don't understand why they don't see that. And I'm not saying don't go to the college and get people, but you already have people. Imagine if you just send them to college and teach them a little bit. And not to actual college school, but just teach them how to be a manager. Because no manager is good by just doing paperwork. You have to do operations, right? So there's a disconnect on what people think a manager should be, who they should be, and who truly is the leaders of that team. Those teams usually have leaders there. But now we go back to the point I did when we were talking about immigration. You may have 10 Mexican guys there, but nobody speaks English. So you have another problem. So you have to find somebody there that is willing to move up, or you have to find someone that is willing to come in and take on that challenge. Now, that's not easy to do because most Mexican guys will say this: I don't want to be a manager because they don't even make more money than I make. I make more money working by the hour. Those are the basic things that we don't think about. But every one of them will say this. They'll make me work weekends. They'll have me here at night when the cattle get out. So why would I do that? Well, they need inspiration. They need motivation. They need to connect with that company, with someone within that company, so they want to do it. So they see past the compensation. What else are you offering for that family that they can see past the compensation? I'll tell you just a quick story for your listeners. I was training a Mexican kid with one of my clients. He was a pen writer. We were going to make him the feedlot manager on a small 15,000 head feed yard. The biggest impediment that that kid had was his father. Because his father, Mexican guy, was a pen writer in a different feedlot, kept telling him, they're just going to fire you. Because here where I work, every manager that we hire only stays 2 years and they get fired. Don't do that, son. Don't do that, son. Don't do that, son. It took me 6 months to convince this kid to take on the opportunity of his lifetime, by the way. Dropped out of high school, started writing pens on the feed yard. He's 21 years of age. He's the general manager to the two feed yards because the opportunity presented itself. But without someone like me talking to them, not because I'm special, but somebody has to do the encouragement. Somebody has to do the motivation, the showing them what's after, making them see that there's so much pride with being a leader. There's so much honor of being in charge of families, but we don't talk about those things. We tell them you're the boss now, and you got to get up early to do the fat cattle because nobody else can figure them out. There's a lot of those little holes in operations, and And those things directly affect every culture that you have in your feed yard. And then you get separated, and then you don't have a team. You just have a bunch of people that come in for a paycheck, and your animals suffer when this happens.
There's so many opportunities out there for continuing education and workshops that come to mind to become better cattle handlers and whatnot. And so many of us are beef quality assurance certified. And Sam, from your perspective, what are some programs out there that maybe you recommend that operations send, especially Hispanic speaking workers to? As you said, when you have that connection, when someone can when there's not a language barrier, you're going to understand. There's going to be a sense of respect as well, camaraderie. What are some current things that you maybe suggest folks participate in, and what are some suggestions you maybe have for the industry as a whole to provide to employers and workers out there of all nationalities that are out there helping the U.S. cattle system?
Mm-hmm. The BQA program is and continues to get better every day. Now there's a Spanish version. I know the NCBA folks are working on that. I was supposed to help with that, but
You're a little busy.
life gets in the way. But the BQA is definitely a great way to explain to guys. I think if you have a feedlot and you hire one person, you should immediately do the BQA training as well as a tour of your feedlot. Show them the feedlot, show them where things are, where the shovels are supposed to go, where the tools are supposed to go, and then sit them down with you and go through a BQA deal, and then go to the pens and walk them around and show them the process and show them this, show them that. It'll take you probably 2 or 3 hours of your day, but it will pay dividends. So the BQA system, I think, is great. I think it can always be better with a little more hands-on programs within the program, if that makes any sense. Like if we can actually teach people how to do things instead of just teaching them in a classroom setting, that would be good. And I am a trainer of the BQA, so I do that in my community here. I do it with my teams. But there's another one, Lane, another thing that I think escapes our system. And I've talked to everyone about this. Anytime the NCBA or like in our case, the Washington Cattle Feeders Association or the Washington Cattlemen's or the Washington Woman Cattlemen or Woman Cattlemen's or whatever, Cattlewoman, I mean, anytime they have programs or trainings or roundtables, people get invited through an email that goes to their corporate offices. And then that corporate bigwig gets these emails and probably just disregards them. And the actual workers of the feedlots never get invited because there's no way to reach them because it always goes to the main offices. I can tell you this with certainty. Anytime that we do something here in our state, I personally call the feedlot managers to tell them that it's happening because they don't even know it's happening. Because the emails just go out to other people. So I feel like as all of us in the cattle industry should know who's who at the feedlots. There's great people at the feedlots that will take great pride by showing to these events, and then they take it back to the feedlot or to the ranch or to the processing plant and tell their peers about it, and everybody gets excited about it. Instead of just inviting the vice president of the company, I mean, that guy doesn't need to be there. I'm sorry.
That's an interesting point you bring up, Sam, because you almost think of it too as all the whether it's a big feed lot or a small feed lot processing facility or it's a ranch, all those are members of their respective groups, whether it's feedlot or meat processing, whatever it might be. But it's almost like and so maybe some states do this, but maybe there just needs to be a tier for an affiliate membership for the employees, whether it's a ranch manager or a few down there, to be able to have that connection, to feel included out there too. I think hopefully our state affiliates that are listening to that, I think that's an important topic to think of, especially as we continue to want to grow and maintain membership in our organizations too.
When you do your BQA certificate, we all have to write down our email to get a certificate on a personal level. Why can all those recipients get an invitation? Imagine the amount of people we will have in our meetings or trainings. We will have more people. And then the BQA certificate means more. So the next guy that is taking it, he knows or she knows that I do this and now I get to participate on these things. And maybe it's because they want to participate to get a better job or to further their career, which is okay. Because we want people to be excited about our industry. But I feel there's a huge disconnect there. And this is everywhere that I've traveled, I've never seen the actual people doing the jobs. Because people will tell me, oh, these are the guys from X Fila. And I look at them, I'm like, no, they're not the guys from X Fila. There's two of the owners and like the general manager, but the actual guys from that Fila are not here. I know them and they're not there.
I can't smell it. I can't smell it.
Exactly. Where is the cattle manager? Where is your processing supervisor? Where is the guy that ships the fat cattle? How important is that guy? How good would it be for that guy to go learn more cattle handling, to learn about beef or meat or whatever? But anyway, we can get into the weeds on that. But I just think that uh, the disconnect between the big business of our industry and the little guys, because everybody will always tell you, most feedlots can find like a feedlot manager, and some of them, and almost most of them, have workers, and they always tell you we struggle with the middle managers. Well, yes, they do, and we do as an industry, but the reason is because we ignore them. Is because we want them to work really hard for something that will come later. That's number one. We always tell them, well, you'll get your raise later when you put in your time. And then we give them all the people issues, which are the hardest things to handle in any business is your people. I have I have different businesses that I own and that I operate, and make no mistake about it, man, the hardest thing is the people. Everything else just happens once you have good people. So you give your less trained, less capable managers of your feedlots or ranchers the most important task, which is staffing and keeping people happy and getting people to work. And then you wonder why you lose them. Well, it's because you're not giving them support. It's because you're not guiding them. It's because you're not helping them deal with the people issues of every day. We in our company, uh, I have two people that help me manage my teams, but all the people issues is all of us. We have a weekly meeting and we talk about nothing but people issues. How's this guy? How is she doing? How's that guy doing? If we don't do it, I can be on vacation or something and then I miss a week or two and something always happens that is almost fatal to somebody. And then you're losing people. It never fails. So life happens to all of us, right? It's a real thing. So
Well, and one thing, obviously, having strong leaders or those willing to become better leaders, maybe a better better way
yeah,
to phrase that. But
yeah,
communication is so key, and we've talked about being able to communicate, whether that is on a language basis, on a leadership basis. But how important is it for all cattle producers to communicate, whether it's in English, in Spanish, whatever it might be, but just being better communicators and not just saying, well, you should. I like that analogy. walking everybody through the feedlot, because I wish my dad would, or father-in-law even, would walk me through the shop once or twice so I knew where everything
Right.
was still to
Yeah.
this day.
Yeah.
But the importance of communication and not taking offense to input and creative ideas, and that can go for every single operation or family operation listening to this today. But the importance of having an open mind that can think critically of things and maybe share some history of why things aren't done that way, but still being able to communicate.
Right. Well, it goes back to that old saying: the most dangerous saying in business is, "This is how we've always done it." We all kind of know that change is very hard. Those of us that change easy or not change easy, we suffer it very, very, very hard. Um, Communication is everything. But I will tell you this: if you concentrate on connecting with your people on a personal level, we all have something in common. Mexican, Asian, it doesn't matter where you come from. We all have families, we all have a wife or a husband or kids or bills, or some of us are overweight, some of us are skinny, we have sickness, we have lots of things that are common with each other. If you connect with people in that way, communication is easy. If you don't connect with them, communication is impossible. I don't care how many systems you do, and I don't care how many meetings you have. If you're not connected with your people, they'll never be honest with you. Never, ever, ever, ever. Why would they? They don't know you. They probably fear you. So, number one, connect with people. Number two, have a clear channel of communication. I always like to have a weekly meeting. Like if I'm the general manager of our organization or the owner or whatever, I get all my leaders once a week in one room. We talk about everything. And then I expect them, when they're done with the meeting with me, to go talk to individual teams. And then the next week, I want feedback, right? So what happened? What happened last week? It's only 7 days. But if you do it every month, 30 days is a long time. So that's a good way to communicate. Now, these meetings, if you're listening and if you say, oh, okay, next week I'm going to start having meetings, and you forget to connect with your people, those meetings will be absolute hell for you. They will be the most awkward conversation you've had in your life, and it's not going to get better. It's going to turn into the guys hating them. Now, in every meeting every week, Rain, you talk about safety, for instance. You talk about things that are going to keep the guys safe. You tell them how important it is that they go home to their spouses. How important it is that they keep cattle safe, equipment safe, all those things. But you have to remind people every week. And then you talk to each other like this. We're all going to be taking care of each other. So if you're doing something wrong, we're going to say, so we can protect you. You do the same to us, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, connection first, though. If you don't do that connection, you will talk for hours and hours and hours and nothing will ever happen. For those people out there that do horses, that do cattle handling, try training a horse without knowing that horse first. I like to see that. That's the same thing with people. Try going to a pen of cattle and just making them go through a main gate if you don't know how those cattle are going to behave. Everything that we do, like even when you go wash a water tank, you stand over the water tank and you first study it. Which way is the water going to go? How am I going to clean it? This is my technique, blah, blah, blah. When we're going to drive a pickup, go buy a new pickup and just start driving it without paying attention. And I don't know why we do this with people, where we don't talk to them and we don't connect with them. It's really a little bit insane if you really think about it. It doesn't make any sense.
I think that's a very good way to look at things. And Sam, we have talked a lot of a lot of different areas. I know we had some notes that Sarah provided us, but I've been all over with my questions. But I've really enjoyed our chat here. We've been talking for over an hour, if you can believe that. But I think our conversation today is something that all of our listeners can think about whether they're just a husband and wife on a ranch, maybe it's
Mhm.
multi-generations on a ranch, maybe it's a feedlot, small, medium, large, processing plant, or maybe it's just an agribusiness. Maybe someone sells tractors down the road that's tuned in for this. I think everything that you have talked about here today is so important for the success of our businesses. And how about a shout out for how they can get someone that's maybe interested in your expertise and knowledge? Where can they go to get in contact with you here today, Sam?
Okay, I have a webpage, and it's called sam at samcossio.com.
Okay, Sam Cossio, that is SAMCOSSIO.com. We'll
Yep.
have that linked in the podcast description as well. But Sam, as I mentioned, we've been talking here an hour. I hope to catch. I can't wait to meet you in person someday as well. But just for somebody that's listening to this, what's one tip you want them to walk away with here today as we wrap up our conversation?
Well, uh, like I told you before, I'm always very positive. I think if you are somebody struggling with finding help, or somebody struggling with your own emotions when it comes to dealing with people problems, don't struggle with your emotions. Allow your emotions to take control of you for a minute. Quit calling it stress, and allow yourself to be frustrated and mad and happy and sad. And don't be afraid to have somebody let you down. It happens. But your job is to find why you're going to get up from that and keep going. And that's usually our families. That's usually all of that. Now, if the reason you get out of bed every day to run your business or to go work at a business or whatever is your family, I want you to ask yourself this: what are you willing to do for them? And if you're not willing to have uncomfortable conversations with other men for your family, well, then what are you willing to do? Because most men that I know, they are not used to these conversations with men. They don't like doing this conversation. I don't like him either. It's not like I get up in the morning and I'm like, I'm going to go connect with a man. That's not my idea of fun, but I do it because it's necessary. And I do it because at the end of the day, I want to come home and tell my kids that I did everything in my power to make it happen. I didn't just blame the system. I didn't just say, well, there's a labor shortage or the weather is bad or it doesn't really matter. All those things are just excuses. So that's kind of what I want to leave people with.
Well, Sam, I've enjoyed our conversation. I got a lot out of it, if that means anything, and I know our audience does too. And again, you can check out Sam's website as well, as we mentioned. But I appreciate your time today, your insight, and again, I want to thank you for your time. And hopefully, the fall and winter go well for you as well as we as we move into fall here.
Yeah, the summer's coming. So yes, sir. Well, thank you
Well,
very much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our friends for joining us here today on the Cattleman's Call podcast. If you haven't done so, click subscribe, share this conversation as well with all your friends, and join us once again and answer the Cattleman's Call here twice a month on the podcast. With that, Sam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you, friends, for joining us as well. I'm Lane Nordlund. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to NCBA's Cattleman's Call podcast with Lane Nordlund. For more information, visit ncba.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast today.